As I walk through the woods every day here on the property, there's a new discovery out there. And every new discovery is pure inspiration for what I do in my studio. Ted Hadfield, a Farmington Hills resident for 30-some years now, on the Farmington Area Arts Commission, and for 3 years now. And I am a founder of Art Pack Services, a local Farmington Hills business that's been in operation for 36 years. My earliest inspiration in art would probably be from my mother, and this is something I didn't know at the time. It's just after many years realized that Mom was very artistic. She had brought out quilts that she had made early on that just were very emotionally inspirational with what she did without an art background. So Mom has always been an inspiration over the years. Prior to that, it would have been my 6th grade teacher, Sam Hamady. And I was the kind of student that really didn't pay a whole lot of attention to what was being taught. I would have a piece of paper on my desk and then just doing some sort of drawing or poetry, whatever it might be. Obviously, back then I had a penchant for doing that type of thing. And to this day, I don't have any understanding of math, although math apparently is a very creative process. So what Mr. Hamady would do is he would come up to me and ask me a math question, or if I was following, and of course the answer is no, it was evident. So he would take whatever drawing I had done and show it to the students, then pin it on the wall. So he could have gone in the other direction, which I think many teachers back then would have done, and say, this is what you're not supposed to be doing during math class. Instead, he said, this is wonderful, in his way, by posting it. And eventually he started putting my drawings in the showcase in the hall, and to me it was like pure inspiration for the fact that I had done something that was admirable. So I still attribute most of my interest and push to create art to Mr. Hamady back in 6th grade. Mott Community College, then it was probably called Flint Community College. I started going to school there and just took art classes. And it was really just a fabulous time because I think it was $10 a credit hour, very affordable, even for someone that didn't have much of a job. And also the faculty was probably the best that I've ever experienced in all my education. And materials were provided, even rolls of canvas. If you wanted to paint, you rolled off a certain amount, cut it, and made a painting. So it's really a great period. So I ended up spending 4 years at a 2-year college, and at that point decided to move west. We went to Colorado, went to undergraduate school at Colorado State University. Absolutely loved that experience. That's when really, for me, art started becoming a primary focus in my life. And that was probably the most prolific period of my life, my career as an artist. And primarily it's because I discovered a way to break into the college at night. And I was focusing primarily on clay at that point, and they had these wonderful clay bins. It was a brand new facility there where trucks would come periodically and throw open the hatch and dump down kaolin or whatever bentonite clay into these bins in the powdered form. So as soon as the school closed in the evening, I would drive up there in my pickup truck and climb up on the roof, open the hatch, and jump down through. And with this great splash of clay and everything, and I'd go into the facility and I'd work all night long making art. And the teachers always wondered how I could be so prolific because they didn't see that happening necessarily during the day. So that was when I really took upon myself to be an artist. And At that point, Ken Hendry, who was my principal teacher, recommended that I go to Cranbrook. He would recommend, let's see, Alfred in New York was one of the primary schools that he would recommend, in Cranbrook. And I don't think at the time he knew I was from that area. And so I applied. Richard DeVore was probably one of the godfathers, if you will, along with a few others that had taken clay art to a higher platform, you know, in the same level as being paintings or sculpture. So he accepted me to Cranbrook. I packed up to go, and unfortunately for me, he was hired by Colorado State University, so our paths kind of crossed. So the three institutions I went to, Richard DeVore taught at, and I never got to study with him. So that was kind of a disappointment. But nonetheless, very inspirational in my path as an artist. I've been a beekeeper for over 35 years. Typically I have 2 hives. These have been bundled up for the winter and insulated. The entrance to the hive has been reduced down to about a 1/2 by 1 inch entry. This regulates the cold air that enters the hive. It also allows the bees to come out from the hive on a warmer day and do a cleansing flight. The hive is somewhat controlled by the bees. They move humidity through it. They control the temperature to a certain extent. There's probably about 80 pounds of honey in each of these hives. They're both very healthy. They'll use that honey to overwinter on. They eat it, and basically that's all they do. And I've used in my artwork the byproducts such as the honeycomb and propolis as materials and images within my artwork, especially in the more recent illuminated manuscripts. I've used it quite a bit. I feel very privileged to have a studio space like this. It's, you know, for an artist, it's pretty nice. We got 9-foot ceilings. It's a 26 by 36 space. A second floor here where I can do drawing and that sort of thing. This primarily is construction area. Work out different ideas and start fabricating. I think it's the goal of every artist to try to find a foundation from which to work. And for me, it took several years to finally realize that I had developed that foundation. And in retrospect, I can break it down into 3 categories. One would be the book format, which is what I have here in front of me. The other would be the labyrinth, which eventually became the broken labyrinth. And encompassing all that, involving all of the different phases, is a series I called EQUI, which is an abbreviation of equilibrium. So in every piece that I do, there's an aspect of the maintenance of equilibrium. And so I literally would translate that into various aspects of life, our various endeavors that we pursue, that is crucial that we create a balance in. Example of where the equilibrium or EQUI series merged into the book series is right here. So you think of labyrinth as being concentric circles and then broken areas where you try to merge through and reach a certain goal. So for me, it's creating that pathway that you attempt to make to reach a goal, but along the way, something happens in your life and it becomes altered. So from that point of the EQUI series, I started thinking of that body of work as being a much smaller symbol, and in the context of a book, it became like the illuminated manuscripts. So the idea of taking labyrinth and creating that as a letter from the illuminated manuscripts to be an introduction to the book story, essentially. So in '81, we started Art Pack Services, and through the goodwill and help of the artists in the area, art collectors, we were able to start this business and had great support from the very beginning. If I can mention a few people, Gilbert Silverman, major art collector, actually turned his entire collection over to us as two young graduate students and asked us to transport it to Cranbrook for an exhibition. And so that was actually the beginning of Art Pack Services then. Art Pack Services, multi-services. We do everything, 2 or 3 trips to New York and Chicago every month. We have climate-controlled trucks, air ride systems. They're specifically designed just for handling and keeping art in the correct temperature level. Humidity is not too high or low, temperatures are all regulated. So we do trips across country as well as locally. And we have 3 trucks that go out daily into the community. Each truck has 2 or more people that will deliver and then do art installations. Or we may be de-installing, where we would then take it back to Art Pack, and it might go to auction in New York City, might go to local auctioneer. In addition to that, we do conservation work, have a storage facility. It's about 40,000 square feet. It's just loaded with art, and most of it, so it's not a space that you could go to and view art, because most of it's in storage and it's wrapped, and our building is all climate controlled. And we also design exhibition spaces. We just did the Artworks Detroit event, which we designed, provided the walls and pedestals and vitrines, and then set up the art once that was in place. Artworks Detroit has gone through many phases of, with different names. Michigan AIDS Coalition is the organization that we try to fund. It's something that we've been involved in as a company for probably 7 years now. I am a co-chair on Artworks Detroit. I've been a donating artist for probably 15 or 16 years of the 22-year history for Artworks Detroit. Recently, Artworks Detroit and Michigan AIDS Coalition was basically acquired by Matrix Human Services, and which is turning out to be a pretty good and helpful organization to be part of. They've been in Detroit for 108 years now, a lot of great corporate connections, and Artworks Detroit is something that our employees are very pleased to be involved in. It's not only the creative process, but the end result helps the community. AIDS, HIV is something that's not gone away. Our funding goes to research, education, trying to make people more aware of the issues that are involved, and so we're making progress. I think we raised $95,000 this year at our event, and so every year it gets better. So we're looking forward to continuing with them. So one of my inspirations is the property in which we live, and we have a beautiful pond on at the back portion. So I take almost daily different images of the pond, and what I realized at one point that I could take the pond, working with the reflection, reverse the image, or I should say flip it upside down, and still have a very coherent image with the exception of one thing, and that is this being the reflection of the pond. It's flipped over, so the trees are upright, but yet we have one of the very large koi swimming in the trees. So I really was intrigued by that whole realization. So I've done a series of images with that in mind. So what I have here is a still life that I get to play around with. Over the years I've worked also with bonsais, and inevitably at some point they die, and I started utilizing that in my still lives. So I have this flipped image that allows for fish to fly, and then Bone's eyes to take on another life in a still life that is very easily manipulable, and actually the reward, I think, is quite interesting, this being the final photo.
Welcome and thank you for attending our evening of recognition and celebration of the arts and the artistic endeavors of our talented students. Every year I regard this honor as a juror as an opportunity to spend time with young artists and visionaries and their art that eventually will be in charge of running the show.
So my involvement with the Arts Commission, which I'm proud to be part of as a juror, I see in the art that's brought in from the high school students and the commitment they've made to the art, and the commitment that the teachers have made to the students to understand the importance of art. And so I believe this is will be my 4th year as a juror, and I am constantly amazed every year at the quality and level of consideration that the students put into their work. For me, it's fun to see that, but also as an artist, being able to take what I know as an artist, the history of art, and put that in the same format as the art that the students present. Having that continuum from the early days of art, from Da Vinci to the students today, I think is incredibly important. Totally different reason for making art back then as there is today, but certainly equally important. Being able to slow our students down to look and appreciate the world in which we live is, in my opinion, of utmost importance. When I was in undergrad school in Colorado, I was invited to join a group to do an archaeological dig, and I found that really intriguing. Finding an object that's from the past may or may not be intact, but that information that you got from that object was really very interesting. So as an artist, years later, I started doing these robot figures that were what I call past-future figurative. And it's an image of a robot from the future, but supposedly found in an archaeological dig that's from the past, of items from the past. So it began this process of creating a robot shape in various forms and also degrees of degradation, I guess, if that's a correct word. So I've pursued that for several years, and along the way did several images on paper, 2D, of the same imagery, just trying to keep it very basic. The robots came about because I do have a substantial collection of space toys from the 30s, 40s, and 50s that I sort of took that information from. And it's been an ongoing and very enjoyable process. I've found that over the course of being a resident of Farmington Hills, that the area is incredibly supportive of the arts. There's many, many artists that live in the area. There's art on the Grand. The city itself is very supportive of the arts. Many programs that take place out at Heritage Park. I've found that the libraries in the area also are very supportive. Our company has delivered and installed many artworks in the local libraries also. At City Hall, there's always the great exhibition that takes place there. So it's really a great city, a great area for the arts, very supportive. I think the crucial thing in developing an interest and a commitment to art is just being aware of your environment. We pass through life very quickly, going about our business. Even for young people, that's the way life is now. So it's really crucial that you slow down and look and learn about the place in which we live. If you do that, you're going to be inspired. you gather information through the inspiration, and that has to reveal itself in some manner. For me, it's art. And I think for most people, I think I would in fact state that all people are creative. So look, listen, learn, be inspired, and create.